welcome once again to David Hathaway. David, we've got three places to talk about actually. Let's go to Azerbaijan.
I just returned from Azerbaijan. Well, it was extremely powerful because the city we were working in is Muslim, virtually 97% Muslim. But the pastors of the churches there are all converts from Islam. So they understand and know, and they understand how to deal with the Muslim people. And for the first time in history, we were able to hold a meeting in a public hall outside the church. Now that's been forbidden, but we had the Minister for Religious Affairs there, and he couldn't find any fault. And so he allowed us to continue. So for 3 days we were preaching. It was sort of like a theatre in the centre of the town, and the people came, and it was so good that now with the authorities they can't find a fault with what we're doing. So we're invited back next year to have a much bigger one with many more thousands of people. It's a tremendous achievement.
Well, it is because I'm looking at a map as we speak of Azerbaijan. They're in the middle of everything. They've got Iraq on one side, Armenia on the other. Now, is it still war between Armenia and Azerbaijan?
Well, no, the amazing thing is, I think this was something that Trump did. I don't know how he did it, he banged their heads together and they signed the peace agreement, which I find, to me, it's a miracle because, I've been working a lot in Armenia, and friends of mine lost their sons in the fighting. And of course, there's a section of Armenia that has been taken by Azerbaijan.
Yes.
And the war between the two's been going on for generations. It's not something fresh, but dispute over the territory. So the fact that it's only this year that there's a peace solution has made a big difference. That's why we've got freedom to preach the gospel.
I would believe, therefore, regarding Islam, it's not of the militant type.
No, it's not the militant type. No. This I find is quite interesting because I go to a number of Muslim countries, as you know, preaching. I mean, Kazakhstan and others, but they're not militant. They're much more open. I mean, Kazakhstan is incredible because the government said when they created a new capital, built a new city, and said that Azerbaijan would be open to all religions, and it is. So while the Muslims are there, Christians are welcome, and we've got a lot of freedom in Kazakhstan. So really, what I find interesting, Rodney, is God knows the timing. God knows what he's doing. And if you look back at my life, God always put in my heart to go to certain places when it was the only time we could do it. I mean, just look, in the 1980s, God put in my heart to have the East-West conferences in Karlsruhe in Germany. That led up to the opening of the Iron Curtain, because my first conference was in 88, and by 89, the Iron Curtain had started to open, which meant that I could follow back all those people. It opened a flood tide for me to evangelize, which led to the second thing, was when I'd been in Siberia and seen how big it was. God encouraged me to take 400 people to Siberia as Russia was collapsing. It's the only time you could do it, because the fact that everything was collapsing, nobody stopped anything. And we could take stadiums They were so desperate for money, so desperate for anything. You just paid them a few rubles, and you could rent anything. And in fact, we were able to use live television because at that time there were only two. I'm talking about Russia. There were only two TV channels under communism. And we could buy time on one of those two channels because they were so desperate for money. They welcomed us. I remember one city I was in, Susuman, and I wanted to go on television. And they said, "How long do you want?" I said, 30 minutes. They said, "If you pay us $20, you can go live for 30 minutes, $20." And it went out on the main channel immediately before the national news bulletin.
Phenomenal.
So the result was, it was God's perfect timing. We actually, the Russians admit we reached 80% of Russians in those days. Now, the reason I'm commenting on it is, well, everything about my life, even my first visit in 1961, going overland to Jerusalem, nobody had done it before. I was the first. That opened up all the Bible smuggling, which was God's timing. But now what's happening is God is sending me to Central Asia because all of Central Asia and the Caucasus are trying to break free from Russia. And so that means as British, we're welcome. In fact, the British are working there. In fact, I think the British military are training their military, which is only in a small scale, but it's significant that they all want to break free. The only country that hasn't is Georgia. And then they had a big riot, because I work in Georgia. They had a big riot in Georgia in the street, thousands, hundreds of thousands on the street, because somehow a pro-Russian government got elected, but the people, it was a fraudulent election.
Yeah.
You know how these things are. And so the people really are saying, no, we want to join the West. So really it's a miracle. God is working there, and it's absolutely like almost saying it's the only time in history that we've got the freedom that we have to work in those countries.
Going back to Russia, we're
Yeah.
at a tipping point, I think. Russia and Ukraine, they're both suffering. Is there likely to be an early resolution?
Theoretically, there will be no resolution because despite Trump's ideas, Putin cannot agree a peace treaty on anything other than his terms. And his terms are surrendering Ukrainian territory and a pro-Russian government. That's his idea. Why? Because how can he if he stops fighting and withdraws his troops, how can he justify the loss of 1.3 million Russian men and the bankrupting the country? What I've discovered only just recently is Putin has put the whole country on a war footing. He's vastly replenishing all his armed forces and his military, but with no money. So I discovered what they're doing, Rodney. What they're actually doing is forcing the defense companies to borrow vast amounts of money from the bank because the state doesn't have any money left. So there's a massive debt building up. Well, how's that going to end up? And then Trump has at last taken a serious move when he threatened to punish all the nations like India and China that take Russian oil. And it means that that China and India aren't buying Russian oil any longer. So really, Russia is bankrupt. It's bankrupt now. So how he's going to continue, and you see, Putin is quite open in the fact that he won't rest until he takes back most of the territories that he lost with the collapse of communism. I'm talking about Poland and the Baltic states. Putin just cannot accept the breakup of the Soviet Union. But he's not going to live to see it because, I mean, people are beginning to feel the pain, the ordinary people, and particularly now because Ukraine is able to strike further and further into Russia. And as you know, they're destroying critical places. I mean, the latest that they've done, I'm sure you know, in the last days, is to destroy the land bridge into Crimea, the only route to supply Crimea via land from Russia. And the Ukrainians have destroyed that. And of course, the Kerch Bridge is under threat. So what's happening is this. Putin claimed Crimea as being the jewel in the Russian crown. But I can tell you now, Rodney, it's not going to be long before the Ukrainians take Crimea back. That's how serious it is.
Putin is showing his true colours. I remember not long ago, David, when even some Christians are saying, oh, look, he's supporting our children. They can't listen to this LGBT nonsense in schools. He was almost lauded. And now, wow, he's shown his true colours. I repeat, not very nice, are they?
Well, they're not, but I mean, yes, I have to agree that Putin supports the Orthodox Church in that it's against this LGBT stuff and changing sex or whatever you have. Yes, he is against that, but he's not the only one against it. And yes, I mean, even in Britain, there's a rising move against this. I believe what the Bible says, God created men and women. And I've always said, thank God for the difference. And I'm sure you would say the same. Thank God there is a difference between men and women. But you see, the whole world is in a mess, Rodney. I mean, where are we? Where are we going from now? I mean, we're just having these knife crimes here, you know, on that train, that London train. It's the train that goes from where we are down to London, the main north-south run. But nobody is stopping it. And then there's a big thing about, you know, the grooming gangs.
Yeah.
You know about
Well,
them?
you are in the centre of things there. You want to start going to London. Mr. Sadiq Khan confirms he's never even heard what a grooming gang is. What nonsense. And suddenly we find 9,000 cases. They know
Yes.
what's going on, David. They don't know what to do about it. They know helping Israel is a good thing, but they've turned their hearts and minds, this present government, against Israel. Now, that's directly turning the country that is run by an atheist into a very dangerous country. God will not be mocked.
Oh, no, it's true. And I mean, the news today, I'm sure you've seen it, is that the BBC deliberately changed the truth. I mean, firstly, they grossly misrepresented Trump by cutting out a whole section of what he said and trying to join two separate bits together to almost contradict what he was saying. But they've done the same about Israel. But you see, there are too many Muslims in power in Britain. I mean, just look at the fact that 6 of our major cities, the mayor is a Muslim, like this calm fellow in London. And the Muslims have been very, very clever. They've worked their way into the top realms of society. Now, to me, this is a real challenge to us as Christians, because what we should have done as Christians is we should have done that, but we failed. because too many Christians don't want to get involved in politics, don't want to get in different things. I'm sorry, but there has to be some involvement. I mean, look, I'm the biggest evangelist in Britain. I'm a major evangelist. I'll tell you something about that in a moment. But the fact is this, I have to get involved in politics because in where we've just been, Azerbaijan, I have to work there. The Minister for Religious Affairs came into the meeting and said to me, if you say something we don't like, we tear up your visa and throw you out. But I know what he wants. And he admitted, he said, I didn't find anything wrong with what you said. You see, if we preach the simplicity of the gospel, they can't fault it. That's the key. We don't add anything in. We're trying to get back to the simplicity of the Bible and the simple gospel, changing men and changing women. And when the government sees the change in the people, they want it. And this is where we're getting a victory in so many cases over Islam, because the Muslims don't do what the Christians do. The Christians are involved. And I mean, even in Israel, I think, actually, this month I should have been going to Israel, the Israeli government were paying for me to go in because they want people to go in and say, look, life in Israel is quite normal. We need the tourists back. And unfortunately, because I have a problem with the Orthodox Jews, at the moment they've refused to let me in. I was only talking to the member of the Israeli government last night in London, from the embassy in London, and he called me and said, I'm sorry, David, it looks as if we're struggling to get you in. We can't do it this year. But he said, we will support you. We need you to come into Israel. They know my history there. I mean, I've been going there, as you know, 60 years. They know my history. He says, we will pay your flight and pay for your hotel when you come. And that's the Israeli government. You see, when we're Christians, when we stick to the simplicity of the gospel, and when we preach a gospel with power that changes men and women, of course, then probably you and I think they need it more than the men, but let's not get into that. But the fact is this, that I'm finding I'm working with governments.
Well, you're needed in Britain. Have you had no leading inspiration to get into a
Yes,
real needy country?
yes, I have. And so the meeting we've got in a couple of weeks' time on the 22nd of November, I've made it quite clear. I believe God is bringing me back to Britain because as I get older, it's not so easy to travel these long distances to Central Asia, but Britain is on my doorstep. And I really believe that I have a job now to do in Britain because Rodney, yes, my call for 60 years has been the former Soviet Union, but I started evangelizing in Britain. I mean, I was a pastor because at that time there was no money and the church wouldn't support me in evangelism. In the end, I said, all right, I'll take a year out without salary and I'll evangelize. And I was planting churches. But then out of that, God led me to the real mission field, which of course has been Russia, the former Soviet Union. And where I'm working in Central Asia, it's all part of the former Soviet Union. And we're working in Poland. Next year, we've got a big crusade booked. I've just seen the announcements about it in Poland. So we're still working in Europe. And later this month, I have to think of the dates. I think it's by the end of this month. I'm going to Germany and I'm holding meetings in Germany. Yes, but Britain is on my heart. And I really sense that I'm praying over it, Rodney, because of the difficulties in Britain. And yes, I want to start working in Britain.
Interesting. Thank you, David, so much. We'll catch up with you shortly and we'll hear some good news, I hope. Well, it's good news in Azerbaijan, and things are changing there. What a melting pot. Azerbaijan and the southern border, of course, is Iran. They've got everything against them, and yet you can get in there, which is superb.
Well, the amazing thing, Rodney, is that when we're there, we can get young people from 22 nations come. And whether I'm in Kazakhstan or Azerbaijan, they put on a big youth gathering. They've been doing it for some years. I've been speaking to only for the last 4 or 5 years, but they will every time they get 1,500 young people. And this last time they came from 22 nations, 56 cities, and we're training them and sending them back to evangelize and to work. And they're coming from they came from Turkey, they came from Iran, they came from all the 22 countries, and they come, and it's part of my ministry is training them and encouraging them. And in Britain, I'm working with a young evangelist in Britain to encourage him and train him. But you will be interested in one thing. You and I grew up with the old-fashioned hymns. And what we've been debating is modern so-called worship in the church. It's empty. It's nothing. Yes, I was discussing it with my prayer partner, with Dennis, and modern worship in the church is a lot of noise. And yes, there is praise. They are mentioning Jesus, but there isn't the real depth of worship. And I'm going to reintroduce in my meeting in November the 22nd, I'm going to reintroduce what I like in music. It's the old time gospel music. And I've got a group that's working with me to put the joy back into the old songs and to bring the meaning something. You see, the trouble with the modern worship is, I go to a big church when I'm free. I go to a big church where they don't know me, because if I go to church, I want to sit on the back row, enjoy the service. I don't want to be called to the front. I'm in the front too much. No, I like to go and sit at the back. And they've got a big worship group. But when you lead the service, you can't remember a single song. There's music there. And yes, there is an element of praising God, but there's no melody. And I don't know whether you know the Strauss orchestra fellow, Andre Rieu. And he's famous because his Johann Strauss orchestra. But the music he plays, people clap and they laugh and they dance to it. We've got to bring that element back into real worship with songs that mean something, and bring that you come. I want to have a song in my heart, Christian music that I can remember. There's one, Rodney, that particularly I've been listening to. I'm sure you know it. He touched me. And oh, the joy that he touched me and changed, but he touched me. There's a message there. And we need Jesus to touch us. And when I've got all my battles going on, I get back in prayer, Lord, touch me. But you see, that's missing. But those were songs that you remember. And I think when I was 8 years old, how the Lord really, for the first time, spoke to me. And I heard that woman singing, "Hear the Lord of harvest sweetly calling, who will go and work for me today? Who will bring to me the lost and dying? Who will point them to the narrow way?" Where's that song today for the young people to hear? At 8 years old, you know my story. I stood at the top of the stairs and I echoed the refrain, "Here am I, send me." Mm. So actually, I heard the Lord speak through a song when I was 8 years old. And I've kept it. I said, the refrain is, speak, my Lord, speak, and I will answer. Here am I, send me. And literally, I said, I'm here, Lord, 8 years old, send me. But we need that kind of music back in the church.
Well, we both sing from the same hymn sheet, David, on that one. Uh, we go to lots of churches and we see, we'll have to do a special program. But all I can say is a taster. A lot of the words with the modern songs are vacuous. It's all about how I feel. It's all about
Yes,
me. It's
yes,
not about him.
exactly.
Either the correct hymn or the hymn that we sing. No,
Yes.
we must chat about that. Bless you. That's for another day.
Okay.
See you very shortly.
All right. Well, God bless you. And remember, pray for the Ukraine and pray for me because before I see you, I will be on the front line talking to the commanders of the Ukrainian army and praying with them. Okay. God bless you.
God bless, David.